Everyone ready? We'll start getting ready to call the meeting to order in a moment. Call to order the August 16th, 2021 regular board meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. If you could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone who's here with us this evening, as well as those of you who are viewing remotely. I'd like to announce the board held an executive session prior to this meeting regarding personnel and a legal matter. Board members, with an agenda before you, are there any changes to the agenda? Laura? Yes. Okay. E? Okay, so item E on routine approvals will be the first action item then. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. All right. At this time then, Dr. O'Donnell will review some housekeeping items for our meeting.
Sure. Thank you, Emma. For our audience this evening, 30 minutes will be provided at the beginning of the meeting for public comment for those who signed up or via our Google form, which I don't believe we did that this evening, but what we'll do is we'll provide access to those in person as well as those registered online. Each individual will be limited to comments of 2 minutes as time permits for items related to board business that are not on the action items portion of the agenda. For action items, public comment will be held just prior to voting on that item as required by school code. This approach also allows for comments to be informed by the presentation and board's discussion of the respective item. During the meeting, the IT help desk is available. If those viewing remotely encounter technical difficulties, you may email itsupport@scasd.org or give us a call at 814-231-7743. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. O'Donnell. At this time, I'll call on the board secretary for the roll call of board members.
Dr. Bader.
Here.
Ms. Bedell.
Here.
Ms. Brandt.
Here.
Ms. Concepcion.
Here.
Dr. Duffy.
Here.
Mr. Hutchinson.
Here.
Mr. Leos.
Here.
Ms. Sidney.
Okay, thank you. Dr. O'Donnell, do you have a superintendent update then for us?
I do. Before I do that, I'd like to welcome Rick Bhattacharya. Rick is our student representative for the first marking period. Rick, welcome this evening. We had a chance earlier today to do a little brief orientation and check in as he's getting up and running for his upcoming senior year. So welcome, Rick. Mm-hmm. I'd also, before I get to my update, last week our food services department wrapped up their summer meal distribution service. I'd be remiss if I didn't express a debt of gratitude to all of our food service workers, along with the volunteers who have worked so hard to provide meals to the children of our community. Seeing our food services employees come together with volunteers who were students, community members, teachers, and staff members was truly inspirational. This past summer, they were providing meals to about 900 families per week. Since March of 2020, they've distributed 1.4 million meals, a staggering number, and I'd like to thank everyone involved in that effort. Greatly appreciated, in particular, Megan Shaper for all the hours and her leadership of that effort. So thank you. So moving on to the update I shared with you this evening regarding our fall health and safety plan. Much of this was in our communication to families and employees regarding where we are with our phased planning. I'm going to just share a little overview, and I have Jean Knaus with us this evening in case we have any questions related to this. Indoors, obviously, we're mandating masking for all, which is where we are at this time. Indoors, physical distancing 3 to 6 feet, and then we have the outdoors, no masking or physical distancing requirement. Classroom seating arrangements. We've had a few questions regarding classroom seating arrangements, in particular in our elementary schools. And we have vetted that through our health and safety team and are obviously looking to CDC guidelines. And we have decided to permit small groups. In essence, we're looking at about 3 students per small group, they would be at least 3 feet apart. In many instances, they would be facing each other masked, and we did run that by the team. That obviously does allow us to arrange classrooms in a way that does allow small group instruction, as well as some of our class meetings or circles as well. So I just wanted to be clear on that we did vet that out with our safety team, and obviously look to the CDC guidelines, and if anybody has any concerns about the seating for their child, we're asking them to please reach out to their child's teacher or building principal as well. In relationship to supports for students, if we have students who are in quarantine or isolation, our faculty returns this Wednesday, and what we're doing is looking at a variety of ways we can best support those students. But what we want to do first is talk with our faculty further about how we can best support students who are in quarantine or isolation, since the hybrid model is not in place this year. Next item, or the final piece on the update tonight, is the vaccine update, and we're going to be sending requests for parents and guardians to upload proof of vaccination related to students, so that for students who were vaccinated, that'll help us with contact tracing, but also we'll have a sense of what we're looking at with our vaccination rates or levels for all of our secondary schools. So, and we have continued our discussions with Center Volunteers in Medicine as well as local medical providers. We did receive word that some immunocompromised individuals are now eligible to receive a booster or third dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. So individuals who have received Moderna or Pfizer are able to get the booster at this time. So we are looking to communicate that so that we can help support that, as well as just CVIM setting up appointments, and then as things evolve with vaccines, we're continuing our relationship with CVIM as well as communicating with our local health care providers, because we would gladly host clinics as we did through the spring and into the summer. So, Jean, did I miss anything?
I don't know if we just want to give a quick update too, that today just came out about the testing for schools. And the nurses and myself, and I know Randy Brown, are participating in a training to understand what that means and what we might want to participate in. So there'll be more information coming on that.
Okay. Thanks, Jean.
Sure.
Board members, do you have any questions of us at this time?
Questions?
Laura?
I guess, first, speaking as an individual board member, thank you for the decision on masks. I think that I feel more comfortable being in the building that way personally, and I think it follows the concerns that many people have expressed in the community, so thank you. I am interested, though, in, and maybe this is more just a comment or question, as things move forward, and we might be looking at a time when that was to change, knowing what things are coming into that decision, what things you're looking at specifically, would be very helpful.
Sure. There's no question that we'll take a similar approach. If we're going to make a change, we'll share why we would make that change. Either way, if we put more protocol measures in place, or if we made certain protocol measures optional, and as per what the plan was approved, the advisement we're going to take is from physicians and epidemiologists, that obviously the physicians represent our largest pediatrician practices in the community, and I believe Maciek's going to be rejoining us here in the near future. Matt's been staying with us weekly, so that's we'll absolutely be looking to them to help us, as well as what data we are able to obtain. That remains to be seen if there's going to be more changes from the state level. Right now, the levels that you can see that we've linked to the document relate to the CDC's level designation. We continue to communicate locally. Obviously, we have in the past with the hospital to see how they're doing as well. Thank you.
I did have just a question or comment I saw on the action items that we're approving, the purchasing or for the tents that would be installed, and it looked like we're we are getting quite a few tents for various schools.
Yep.
If you could maybe just tell us a little bit about the lunch planning and what role those tents that we're getting would play in lunches.
Well, it's going to be different at each of the levels. Obviously, in the high school here, where we have so much square footage as well as we have outdoor space, there is going to be a tent here at the high school, and it really is for rainy days. During the first couple months of school, obviously, we think things will change with the pandemic as we get into the year, hopefully for the better, but we'll see. But those were to provide flexibility to principals as they work with faculty and lunch support staff, so that we can spread students out. At the middle level, the tents are larger. They don't have as much square footage as the high school, and certain elementary schools obviously have more indoor space, separate cafeterias. So it was really geared at giving them some flexibility at the school level to make site decisions that allow us to have 6 feet at lunch. Because without the tents, that was difficult spacing to realize. Jean, do you want to add anything on that?
No, I think you did a great job on that.
Yeah.
And Randy is now, and I think he knows where every tent in our community is. And so I appreciate him and the physical plant team for figuring that out and identifying where we have those. So that's been a big help.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. That would have been like one of the more frequent concerns that I'd been hearing from parents was how we were going to approach lunch. So,
And I want to emphasize that we're going to enforce putting on masks as soon as kids are done eating too, so that will eliminate the time that they are actually exposing. So we're going to work on all of those pieces for sure.
great. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Anything else for the health and safety update?
No, that's all I
Okay.
have. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jean.
Thank you, Jean. Sure. Okay. Now we'll move on to the legislative update. David and Lori, do you have a legislative update?
Yeah, so we had a meeting, and my time, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, to be honest with you right now. But anyway, coming up is the Psba Conference at the end of September, which I'm sure you're all aware of. There is another virtual advocacy day on October 14th, and you can register for that on the PSBA website. Most of the conversation at our last meeting was dedicated to talking about educating the public about charter school funding, and it was pointed out again that there were 407 resolutions across the state on charter reform, but that it doesn't seem to be doing enough to turn the tide in the legislature, hence the education effort. So it was a pretty robust conversation about thinking about how to get the community engaged and to pay attention really to what charter funding looks like in our communities. And so PSBA is going to be developing some outreach tools for districts to use.
Great.
So.
Thank you. David, anything to add? Okay. Okay, Gretchen, do you have a report from the COG?
That will be covered in info discussion when we'll talk about the SPPA, so nothing for now.
All right, thank you. Okay, so at this time, we have time on the agenda for public comment. So this is a time for public comment of up to 2 minutes, as time permits for items related to board business that are not on the action item portion of the agenda. For those action items, public comment is held just prior to the voting. So at this point, I'll open it up first to public comment for those individuals who are here in person attending the meeting, and then I'll open it up for public comment for those who are joining us virtually. So is anyone here to make a public comment? Okay, yeah, thank you. If you'd like to come down to the podium, and you can introduce yourself and where you reside in the district, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak. So thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I am Alana Chesney, and I reside in Boalsburg. I am a co-chair for the LGBTQ and Gender Equity Work Group, and I would like to comment on the informational items on today's agenda, specifically Policy 100.2, Gender Expansive and Transgender Individuals Ensuring Equity and Non-Discrimination, and Policy 251, Student Preferred Name. First, I want to commend the board for beginning the discussion of how to best support our transgender and gender expansive students, It is our goal to ensure the health and safety of all of our students, and notably of our transgender and gender expansive students for whom there are important and unique considerations. I reviewed the available documents on board docs today related to these policies and administrative regulations. There are parts regarding a student's chosen name and restroom, locker room accessibility that do a good job of protecting student confidentiality and affirming gender identity. However, there are also key elements that are missing from the document. This includes policies regarding participation in athletics, as well as the need for training and education, which is necessary for faculty, staff, and administration to implement these policies. As these regulations are worked on, we feel it is important to continue to work in conjunction with the LGBTQ and gender equity work group to ensure that individuals with expertise in this area can provide feedback and offer best practices. Thank you again for the important work you are doing to support our students.
Thank you for your comments. Would anyone else who is here like to make a public comment? Okay. Then I will open it up to those who are joining us via Zoom. Mr. Williamson, I see your hand raised. If you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself and where you reside in the district, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Steve Williamson. I reside in College Township. I am requesting tonight that the district remove all vaccinated and unvaccinated terminology from the health and safety plan and any other school document. It is discriminatory. It denies benefits to some students, and the district is making a false claim, labeling some students as healthier than others. There are numerous students that have never received other vaccines, and they are not labeled as unvaccinated. I realize the current protocols are not discriminatory, but the language is still in the plan to discriminate in the future, and it needs to be removed. How is this lost on the superintendent, a school board, and 2 pediatricians? Moreover, how is it that we are one of the few districts in the state to have a director of equity and inclusivity, and we are using discriminatory languages and practices? Why even have that position if the administrator is unwilling to speak up against discrimination? Just because you are unvaccinated does not mean you are unhealthy or even a conduit. Just because you are vaccinated does not mean you are healthy or can't infect others. The terms vaccinated and unvaccinated have no business being in a school document, and they need to be removed. There should only ever be one rule for all for our children in this arena. While we may disagree on which rule that is, it is clear from all parent communication at these board meetings that we do agree that there should be only one rule for all students and no discrimination. You taking the CDC's advice to actually discriminate is disgraceful. Board members and administration use phrases like safe, supportive, and inclusive learning environments, rights of self-determination and privacy for all individuals, safety, comfort, and healthy development, eliminating stigmatization and isolation. You say these things in one arena, but then deny them when it comes to vaccination status. You created that, and it makes it very clear that the majority of the team of 10 are being intellectually dishonest in this situation. School starts in 8 days. Eliminate the terminology from the health and safety plan tonight and never go back. Live up to your own words. I do have one other question. Public comment has never reached 30 minutes since last October, and I'm wondering why we're still stuck with just 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Moeni, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to introduce yourself and where you reside in the district, then you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Was she able to get connected? Okay. Ms. Moeni, if you're still there. Okay, I think she might have dropped off. Okay, is anyone else here who, or online who would like to make a public comment? Well, if you'd like to make a public comment, you can do so now. Okay. We might not open it up again at the end for public comment if we don't need to, so. Okay.
Is it on the agenda, Ari, of what you want to talk about, or?
It's about buses and math mandates and protecting people. I don't know, like,
Okay, since that's not on the agenda, how about then you come up now, and that would be great. Then you wouldn't have to wait, okay?
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
Ari.
Okay. Hey, I'm Ari that resides in Boalsburg, and I want to thank everyone for making the mask mandate required, and I'm excited for this. I'm definitely excited for the school year. Thank you to the whole school board and the whole special education for making the in-person school possible and us wearing masks. My only concern is about the buses. How would people not ride the bus? How can we make a decision on people for not riding the bus and people riding the bus during the COVID-19 pandemic? I decided for myself during the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm going to have my grandmother drive me because I'm really concerned that people will pick up infections during the school year if we try and ride the bus. Just, can we please make sure that if no one is vaccinated, make sure that we can vaccinate kids at school as best as possible, somewhere in the school lot. I don't know where, but Delta or somewhere in the school lot. If we can make an event where everyone can get vaccines. I'm not sure if we can make this possible, but I think it would be a good idea to consider that we should think about vaccines and buses. It's very important for us to make sure that we stay safe and healthy during this Delta variant of this pandemic. Thank you, everyone, and the special education for making this year a good year and safe year.
Thank you, Ari. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? All right, seeing none, then we'll move on. Thank you to everyone for your comments. The first item on the next item on our agenda, routine approvals. I'd like a motion to approve the routine approval as presented on the agenda with the exception of item E.
Leo so moved.
Duffy, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on routine approvals? Okay, then we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Bedell?
Yes. Okay, that item has passed.
Amber, I'd just like to say congratulations to the CTC for applying for the grant for the grow lights for the ag program.
Yeah,
That helps.
great. Yep.
Thanks, Jim.
Yes, Gretchen?
I just got a text that people are having a hard time hearing, so if we could all speak directly into the microphone.
Okay, good to know. Okay, the next item is item E, under routine approvals, physical plant service contracts, and this is seen in attachment 5E.
Leo so moved.
Duffy, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Laurel?
Yes, thank you. And you alluded to this earlier. The reason I wanted to pull it out and have more explanation is about the rentals for tent, table, and chair, the amount of $157,000 odd. In particular, it looked like it was for 11 weeks only, and I wondered how that time was selected. And we already found out it's largely for lunch. I'm wondering if they'll be used for other things like expanding outdoor education and whatever all else.
Okay.
So the time period was assumed for the beginning of the school year through, once they're able to be installed, through October. At this point, the massive concern that I have is that in November we can get snow. And so we really want to try to avoid any damage to the tents and then additional cost from snowfall on the tents. Yes, there is a primary use for lunch, but the tents will be there and principals will work with their teachers to understand when, where, how students will be having the opportunity to use the tents they will not be available just for lunchtime. There will be obviously other times. I can't speak to that. That's going to be within individual building decisions, but they're not assigned just for lunchtime.
And I know this may seem self-evident to others, but the tent part of it, as opposed, the tables and chairs I get, but what is the...
Recording in progress.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, and why the tents in terms of, would we think that we'd be having children out there, say if it's raining or something?
I'm sorry, I'm not following the question.
Is the reason to use tents as opposed to just tables and chairs so that children could be outside, for instance, if it's raining?
Well,
not thunderstorming, but raining.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's not only for rain, any weather, precipitation, but also if it happens to be an overly bright sunny day, which we sometimes get in Happy Valley, that way they're not, students aren't being exposed to the direct sunlight and can have a more enjoyable experience.
Okay. And I had read about the difficulty people were having getting tents, so I imagine it was a lot of work to get this far. Thank you.
Yes, my physical plant department worked very hard to get this in very short order.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on this item? Okay. Is there any public comment in regard to the physical plant service contracts? Okay. Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Concepcion?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Bedell?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. The next item under action items is a motion to approve an agreement with Ms. Pia Hansen for Bridges Intervention Professional Development, and this is shown in attachment 6A.
Duffy, so moved.
Bedell, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item?
I know we discussed this in committee. We do have Deirdre on the Zoom with us as well, if you have any questions.
No, and we talked about it at CCL, and this is a great opportunity to really integrate our core gen ed curriculum with what we're doing in intervention. So
Yeah,
it's a really positive step forward.
Yeah, this is a valuable support to the work of the interventionists. If you think about it, if you're working with a student who has skill deficits and you want to communicate, work with that student within a curriculum area such as mathematics, it's critical that you understand the core, the program in which that student is instructed in the classroom, so that one can properly support the student and teach the skills necessary for success. So it just makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Okay, well, I'll go ahead and with a roll call vote then.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Bedell?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion?
Yes. Okay, that item is passed. Item B is a motion to approve the K-12 updated science curriculum that is shown in attachments on 6B.
Leos, so moved.
Bader, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on this item? I know we also had a discussion about this in CCL this past week. Laurel?
Thanks. I'm wondering how because this is a sequential thing, to the extent students may have missed things in the past year, how that will be worked in with the sequence moving forward.
Deirdre, did you hear the question?
I did. This is Deirdre. And so we have a 3-year rollout plan that we've created, Laurel, because we have very antiquated science units, as you're aware. And so we've created a plan over 3 years where we're going to phase older units out and entering new units. And so it's not a beautiful system by any means, because there are some concepts that students have missed because last year at elementary we didn't focus on science and social studies. So we're going to do our best, and we feel like the curriculum that we've moved forward with science is very robust. And although the specific things in elementary are important, specific facts. We're really focusing on the process of that science understanding with what are the questions we're trying to answer, and really teaching them how to solve scientific problems rather than here is a specific content area. So I hope is that helpful, Laurel?
Yeah, I appreciate the emphasis on process. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Any public comment on this item? Okay, then we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Vader?
Yes.
Ms. Bedell?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. Item C.
Thanks, everybody.
Sorry. Item C is a motion to approve an MOU with Patton Township for Park Forest Middle School SRO services, and this is shown in attachment 6C.
So moved, Duffy.
Leah, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on this item?
So I just want to make a brief comment. I'm kind of repeating the comments I made to some extent at the CCL meeting last week. I think it's really important when we have that we give thought to the impact of something like the SROs in terms of what's the experience like for both our students and for our faculty members. And so my yes vote is really contingent upon the fact that we're committed to really understanding from the ground level how they experience the SROs. Is this something that increases their sense of safety in the school? And so I'm really glad that the administration is committed to getting that feedback from our students so that we can, going forward, we could think about, more intentionally, are there any changes we want to make? Are there things that aren't serving our purposes like we thought they were? And so that as we go into it next year, we may want to make some changes. That would be good if we did that, but we need that information, that feedback, in order to go in that direction if we want to.
Dan?
Yeah, and this follows on some thoughts that have come up earlier in previous discussions about this topic. Thinking back to February when we had an opportunity to review Dr. Stout's report and the description of the history of the program and what it tells us in terms of the role of the school resource officer. One of the takeaways from me from that was that that these individuals are thought to serve a valuable function, though there would be opportunity in all this for there to be closer alignment, closer coordination, closer collaboration with other support staff in the school. And so, and I don't know exactly how much of that happens now. I know having worked in that setting, there are meetings where people sit and participate in discussions and so on, but it's uncertain to me how much the people fulfilling other roles, for example, school counselors as an example, how much they would be aware of the training the school resource officer has received so they might know what to expect of the school resource officer. What is their role? How is that defined? So, and I think when teams work in school settings, almost all the time, the members of teams typically understand the roles and areas of training that different team members have. And I think this is less the case in the instance of a school resource officer, simply because we don't have a background in law enforcement. We don't have a background in criminal justice. We don't have a background in public safety. We're concerned about those kinds of things as educators, but we don't quite live in that world. I think along with David's proposal, I apologize for knocking my mic, along with David's proposal, I would suggest that we, and as I said earlier, work out in a sense, a organizational chart that indicates where the SRO, the school resource officers, is nested in terms of systems and with whom they collaborate and on what teams they collaborate. I think there'd be real value to that. I really am glad to see within the outline that we've been provided that will be where the school resource officer will be expected to attend training provided by the National Association of School Resource Officers, and in school district activities and activities related to equity, childhood trauma, cultural responsiveness, restorative practices, and so on. But I think there'd be value too in making that bridge a little better defined by having the school staff really get a sense for what kinds of things the school resource officer has been trained in, and vice versa. The school resource officer might learn more about the training and background for the other members of their team. This is an approach that's in the past been described as either interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary, and I think there would be value in thinking about or organizing the role of the school resource officer that way. This, in terms of one other point about this, this relates, I think, pretty well to an idea that came through the report and the set of recommendations provided by the mental health team. The report of which was presented to the Borough Council and also to the county, through which it was recommended that the law enforcement participants in interventions with people with mental health problems engage in a co-responder model, which is where it's not just this law enforcement officer, but also a mental health person who participates together. So I'm not suggesting we have that role in that of the school resource officer, but it does suggest to me that coordination and collaboration between our law enforcement individual assigned to the schools kind of be aligned more closely with the kinds of things we do every day through other specialties and other specialists. It's a lot to say. I apologize for taking up so much time.
That's okay. I think it's valuable thinking.
I have a couple. Oh, I'm sorry. I have the wrong glasses on, so I can't see. I mean, I can put these on to see you people, and I can put these on to see my notes. So I'm looking at my notes.
Okay.
So I'm sorry if I'm interrupting.
Oh, go ahead, Lori.
Okay. Getting older. All right. So I apologize for not being able to make it to CCL. I have a question. I was reading through the responsibilities, and what kinds of presentations do SROs give to teachers and students, or will this be something new that they do according to the MOU?
No, in some of the training that we do with emergency response, the SROs do deliver some of those presentations to students and faculty. I know Curtis is here. He had sat down with each of the principals and the SROs as well, and then we spoke with the police chiefs as we reflected on what SRO's responsibilities are. CJ, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. One is the prime example is vaping. When we had all those issues with students vaping in our schools, the SRO was able to give trainings to our teachers of what to look for, what it looks like, and what are the next steps to help students, and as far as educating the students and the parents and the teachers about vaping. So that would be one example.
Okay. Yeah, that's a helpful example. My next question is...
Lori, I can tell you another example.
Oh, please.
Because Dan and I are on the CAC for Safe Schools, and we had the opportunity to watch a video by an SRO from the high school about that the kids the high school students all watched. And so that was a presentation, and it was about run, hide, fight. So that's just another example.
Yeah, and I know that the school resource officer also participated in some of the sexual harassment education curriculum in our health curriculum at one point, because my child had, a couple of years ago and I had attended that. So, yeah.
Okay.
So things really like that, I think, are...
And cybersecurity, too.
Yeah, the legal aspects of those areas.
Right. That's great. And then my other question is, what is the timeline for the conversations that we want to have with our stakeholders, and what is the nature of those conversations? Will they be focus groups or surveys, or what are we thinking about?
Well, our leadership team is looking at trying to put people in situations where we can talk about their experiences and help identify what aspects of the SRO's role is supportive. Obviously, we use SROs, as you can see, for other aspects than simply presenting to people. They are interfaces to all the emergency responders in our community. So the training they do with principals as well as the external partners, so that when we have emergencies in our buildings, people know where they're going and they're speaking common language, because we in education don't use the language of first responders. And if we're going to be expected to become experts in first responder approaches, language, then we need a lot of time to train our people. So they're our liaison to that. And I think timeline-wise with this, we need to see how this pandemic goes before we make this a priority. But I do think in our secondary schools, we'll look to our team, throughout in the SROs, as well as Saria's been part of these conversations, to see what kind of questions do we know, or concerns that are coming at us, so that how we go about it. So we haven't created an action plan. If the board wants a survey, then I don't know if we're planning on doing a survey yet, because we haven't established that outreach. I'm not sure. I think if the board wants to know whether or not people want SROs or not, that's a different question than what I was thinking with how we would go at the conversation.
Yeah, I just, again, I apologize for missing that meeting. I wasn't sure of what the details for that would look like, so it's just a matter of me understanding where administration is in terms of.
I do think, for people who have concerns, we want to understand what those are, and are we putting SROs at times in situations where they are having an impact that they don't see or understand, or that are we asking them to do something that really isn't the value or what they should be focused on. So I think the conversations will help us clarify whether better ways to improve our program and the use of these resources, as well as areas that we want to make some adjustments. So I think I'd be happy to come back to the board with some details in regard to, so you have a sense of how we're going to have conversations, what their focus is going to be. When Rick and I were talking earlier this morning, I'd shared with him in relationship to the board work sessions with students, one in the fall, one in the spring, that I'd like to resurrect. And maybe that would be an item that would be on the agenda for some discussions. That obviously isn't a quantitative data point. Depends who would want to come talk, but maybe that would be one of the items high school student leaders would want to talk about with the board.
Yeah, all of that is really helpful. So thank you for that. And I feel really assured by what I perceive to be the administration's commitment to really think critically about the role of officers in schools. And I particularly appreciate the delineation of the responsibilities in this MOU. I think that's super helpful. I think not just here in State College, but in many places, we're at this place in time where, SROs have been a part of the tapestry of many school districts since the 90s. And, they were brought in for a very specific reason then, and in response to the shock of school shootings, to be quite frank. And with them, came a lot of deeply embedded issues, and they became really normalized. So I think that we're at a place in time where we're able to reflect really carefully about what that means for kids in school. And, the implicit assertion that somehow, and whether this is, I don't think this is the case, but there's an implicit assertion that kids need to be policed somehow by law enforcement. And so I think we have an opportunity here to be very clear about why we are using SROs, how they are of value to our school community, to be clear about what void we think we're filling by having SROs in our schools, because I do think we're in a paradigmatic shift in thinking about what this means for kids. So I'm supportive of these MOUs, but I also look forward to a really critical assessment of what this means in a big picture kind of way, and what it means in a practical way. So I just wanted to share those thoughts, and I know some of you have heard me talk about this, so I think I'm speaking just to sort of give clarification to people listening or people paying attention to this, that this is kind of where I am on this topic. So
I appreciate that, Lori, and I think from my perspective, SROs has played a critical role as a liaison and a partner in instances which I don't want to lose the relationship and the expertise where we've had threats of harm toward our schools, and we've had police in homes within the hour of those threats, but also threats from students to students happening outside of school or online, and the ability to have someone visiting with families and trying to resolve things quickly has been a direct result of that relationship. So whatever direction we go, I think law enforcement has really helped us to ensure that was a threat verified that weapons weren't in that home. So I just want to be careful that we want to take the real value that we've seen over the years, and then also what we learned that can help us improve to David, some of your comments about climate, what we can do to improve. And so I think those conversations they need to be ongoing.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I look at this more as an opportunity to reset and clarify what we're doing. Yeah.
Thanks.
Rick?
So I guess I just wanted to put my word in a little bit, because I think with our, the students, especially our generation, we have kind of been around this our entire lives. I know I was talking with Dr. O'Donnell this morning, and we, since middle school, we've seen so many school shootings. This whole safety aspect is such a large part of what we're seeing in school. And I think that I kind of have to reflect, a lot of people said that basically the role of the SRO is a little different than the educator. They can do some things that are kind of different and have a sort of different relationship. I know we brought up vaping, run, hide, fight. I think that's really a small part of what they do. But I think that one thing that I think we should address more is kind of having this communication, because I know I personally have not had that much contact with our SRO officer, Aston, but I know the few times I have had contact with him, he's always said that I'm kind of open to talking, feel free to come, whatever issues you're having. But I think that it's more and more important that people see that and kind of have those communications, because so many students out there, so many, just everybody in the community, you can't really see what's happening without having that conversation. And I think that is really important and something that we should focus on as we go forward.
Thank you. Laurel?
Thanks. I want to echo the comments that were just made in terms of the value of those conversations. I'd expressed at the committee meeting that I was concerned about having this up for a vote without having a twofold iteration where it came up once, there was opportunity for input, and then we voted a following meeting. And I do understand the timeliness of this, so I'm okay with voting in favor of it because of a couple of assurances. One being that the conversations will be happening, that we'll be looking at that. And it's not just about, I think it's also an opportunity for people to understand from the perspective of people who have found having the SROs very helpful, what that is, because sometimes that voice, I think, may not have been as vocal. We've gotten some letters, and I've talked with some people on that end. But those conversations can help clarify the roles and the importance and difference, as Rick said, about how this person is different than some of the other people in the building. I do want to note this is a one-year contract, and I'm going to be specific in asking that it please not be on as a routine approval a year from now, but that it be a conversation. Again. Because it just says that we looked at an annual renewal, so that's why I'm saying that.
Dan?
Yeah, I just want to thank Rick for his comments and his first-person explanation of the perceived role of the school resource officer by him and by other students. And I want and everyone else's comments as well, David's, Laurel's, Lori's. I think it's really helpful. If we put all these pieces together, I think we get a really meaningful basis for an action plan of some sort. And it just, for me, just reinforces, through, particularly Rick's comments about the role of the school resource officer. It reinforces for me the importance of collaboration between the SRO and counselors, the SRO and others who serve the mental health needs of our students, just to work collaboratively so that they're not alone as they interact with students, but they're representing the team. So I just wanted to offer that comment again. Thank you.
Thanks. Amy?
Yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit about, and to Lori's point about, paradigm shifts about how we think about roles in schools. I think I agree that's kind of a place we're at, that we're more intensely looking at the role of everybody in a school building. What is fair to ask of a teacher? What is fair to ask of administrators? And so I really appreciate that after some concerns were brought to us by the community, that the team went forward and got more specific about those roles. And so I think that's a really good iteration and step forward in clarifying what our expectations are for SROs and what they do. And as Dr. O'Donnell said, I see this as an ongoing conversation as we work to build an inclusive environment in our schools. We're going to have to constantly look at everybody's roles and what are the impacts of what they do on different people in the community, and potentially address those issues. So I think this is one step forward, and it may not be the last in how we define this role, but I think it's an important step that we're taking. And I just wanted to mention, Dan was making a comment about training, and I couldn't skim quickly enough with the distraction of also trying to listen to the comments, but I'm pretty sure in the MOUs there is specificity about the superintendent having a role in the selection of the officer assigned to this duty, and also that if that person is not available and a replacement, when they go on vacation and things like that, I assume that the attempt will be made to still assign an individual who has SRO training. So that is part of the MOU. So I just wanted to clarify that there is an expectation that the people fulfilling these roles do have specific SRO training. And just like we have standards in schools, I would expect that they have standards of their own in terms of what their skill sets need to be. So there is some capacity for that and expectation of it. Thanks.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Okay. Yes, if you'd like to come to the podium, and if you'd like to introduce yourself and where you reside, and then you'll have 2 minutes. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Spencer Chesney. I reside in Boalsburg, and I'm a co-chair of the Race and Marginalized Populations Work Group. And so I just wanted to say I'm thrilled to see the board really taking a deep dive into the SRO details and critically evaluating their role in both positive and potentially negative roles. And so I just wanted to reach out again and say, in terms of having that dialogue with stakeholders from all groups and all perspectives, that use us as a resource. For example, we're having a town hall tomorrow night with SCASD community members of color, parents, students, teachers, staff, to discuss a range of issues that RAMP is interested in. SRO is one of them, and see where it lists on their priorities. So we're continuously engaging community members, and so that's an opportunity, I guess, to work together. That's it.
Thank you. Where would folks find information about that town hall if you have a moment? Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
So we kind of emailed the RAMP members and tried to ask them to communicate that to other people as well. But I'm happy to send out like an email with the link. It's a Zoom link, so it'll all be virtual, so easy for people to access.
That would be great.
So I don't know if you have any recommendations on where else to send it to for people to be able to see it.
Well, if we shared that with the communications team, could they put it out on our social media, Dr. O'Donnell? So at least it's...
Yeah, obviously we're trying to open the school year to put it out this week. I'll talk with the team with all the things we're putting out, and I'll talk with Saria about what you're doing. This is the first I'm hearing of it.
That's okay. Amber and I can at least put it on the board of directors page that we run, right? Because we can have access, so we could put it there. So yeah, if you send it to us.
Could you, maybe at least send, all dashboard is our email. I know you've emailed us before. If you could just send us an email, that would be great.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
If
sure.
you're,
No problem.
if, depending on if you want, what kind of attendance you want. So I don't want to overwhelm you or anything, so.
Yeah, I mean, right now I think we're focusing on, we have ideas for priorities. This is in relationship to the steering committee meeting that's happening at the end of the month. And so we're just looking to get feedback on, do our priorities truly reflect the interests of the community at large,
Right.
Particularly for people of color and marginalized populations. So we're really, we're trying to get a target audience.
Right,
Um,
okay.
So that's why we kind of targeted mostly to ramp in that network.
That makes sense.
So I don't know if we want to do like a SCSD broad
That might
thing or
not.
anything. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Gotcha. Well, if anyone listening, would
Thanks,
want to
Beth.
get in touch, they know how to find out about it then. Thanks. Okay, is there any other public comment on this item? Okay, then we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Leos? Yes.
Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Rader?
Yes.
Ms. Bedell?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Item D is a motion to approve an MOU with the State College Borough for the high school, Mount Nittany Middle School, and Delta SRO services as shown in attachment 6D.
Duffy, so moved.
Leah, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions on this item? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote then. Oh, I'm sorry.
Did we check all the online?
Oh, I'm watching it.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
I'm just double checking. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Sidney?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Bedell?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. Item E is a motion to approve change orders for the bus garage paving project as shown in attachment 6E.
Leah, so moved.
Duffy, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion on this item?
I guess the only thing I would want to ask about, Randy, if you don't mind, this is a pretty substantial change order for what is essentially, to oversimplify it, is a paving project. And I understand there were some problems with the subsurface materials and so on. Not unusual when it came to building the high school, but this is something that would have been anticipated. And it's a pretty expensive fix. So if you can talk about that, I appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm very disappointed with this change order, obviously. This change order is approximately a third of the original cost of the project. However, it was the testing that was done before the project started did not reveal this problem, and when it was discovered was in the middle of the project, so we really had no choice but to complete the change order to raise the stability of the property so that we could continue the project with the paving and give us a place for the bus garage parking in our fleet. So yeah, it's through no fault of anyone being not compliant or not doing the necessary steps that we would normally do. It was just a complete unfortunate circumstance. And as you said, we found very similar situations, definitely the high school and maybe even some of our other projects.
Radio Park.
It's just, it's very, a very, very important site now to us, and so we needed to complete it.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks a lot.
Any other questions? Jim?
Well, I'd just like to say, this is a hard one to swallow, but, over the years, we've received some complaints about the potholes and things like that. So in terms of, how much does this count in terms of sprained ankles or bus maintenance improvements? So I think, you have to put it in perspective. The way that parking lot was before this was done was pretty bad.
Laurel?
I had more of a procedural question because, as you said, this was in the middle of a project. Before a project, we bid the project. And it was a lot less than this for the initial piece of it, and then part got added on, but we can't go out to bid at this point. So what is done to make sure that the pricing that we're given is in line with what we might get from a bid? What process is followed in your office and at the
So
fiscal plan
obviously,
office?
we needed the project to be completed, and we're hopeful that the contractor puts forth their best effort. But that's why we hire an architect on the project, and the engineers were also involved as well. And so, when we feel that there's negotiation, that is done as well before you get that final change order. And
Okay.
again, the nature of the project, this change order, this work was already done, just because I could, which is not normal process, understand, but because of the nature of the project, it just needed to be completed. But that's why we have our design professionals and engineers involved, and that's a benefit that we have for them, because we don't always have the expertise to understand if they are giving us their best foot forward or if they're trying to take advantage.
Thank you. That's exactly the information I was looking for.
Sure.
Okay, anything else? Okay, any public comment on this item? Okay, then we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Ms. Bedell.
Yes.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Ms. Sidney.
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Item F is a motion to accept the low bid for the South Track Landscaping Project as shown in attachment 6F.
Leah, so moved.
Duffy, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? All right.
I guess I have a quick question. So will this be the end of the landscaping, the trees for this? Is there another phase coming, I guess is my question.
Not at this time, no. This has been a request of the neighbors of the South Track community based upon conversations with the borough. This was requested, and at this point, there are no additional phases to this landscaping project designed, or have they been requested to date.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
We actually
Yeah.
discussed this prior to the lights going up, and it was something that we had kind of discussed and looked at once the lights were in, and then obviously put on pause because of the pandemic. So I think that's about. Thanks.
Correct.
Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, then we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Bedell.
Yes.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Ms. Sidney. Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. Moving on to information discussion, item A is under the category policies, 100.2, gender expansive and transgender individuals, ensuring equity and non-discrimination, and this is shown in attachment 7A. We have Linda Pierce at the table with us, as well as Dr. Chatters and Curtis Johnson and Jean Canals.
As they're getting set up, I just, as we reflect back on, the 10 years that I've been in the district, our support for transgender and gender expansive students has been happening all along. I think this definitely takes a step forward with clarifying and as well as making some improvements. And as I told the committee, Lori and I have talked numerous times. Well, I think our faculty and principals, this will help to understand expectations and bring some more clarity to what we're doing, what we're not doing, partnering with families, and having Jean and Saria here with us, shows, the counselors play a big role in this, and they have over time, and we want to make sure that we're learning and doing a little bit better than where we've been. We have some wonderful resources for us in the community as well as on our team, and So this would be a step forward in being clear with expectations from the board for all of us too. So thanks for your work on this. Linda, did we want to share a little bit an overview of anything here publicly and field any questions? And obviously people on the committee as well.
We have had multiple extensive discussions in how best to communicate the resources and the board's commitment involving gender expansive transgender individuals and the support for them. We are recommending 2 policies. The first one is in the 100 series because we are recommending that it be applicable to everybody, employees and students. So that's why it's located in the 100 series. The other policy having to do with a student's preferred name obviously can only apply to students. So we're recommending that it be housed in the 200 series. For both policies, we have worked on some administrative regulations, a very good resource document that hasn't quite made its way into a regulation yet. We've attached 2 documents. These are strictly drafts. They are not completed. They're just intended to show you what direction we are going in, what we would like to do next after school gets started. So I don't know if that means mid-September, late September, October, but sometime in the early fall, to meet with students and see what their thoughts are, to meet with faculty and get their input, and to meet with administrators and get their input before we finish the administrative regulations for these 2 policies.
Lori? Thank you. First of all, I just want to echo Linda's point about the extensive meetings and the long conversations. And for that, I'd like to thank everybody who was involved, including students who shared information about their lives and their experiences with us in meetings, parents, former teachers. I mean, it's been a really wonderful kind of coming together of lots of different people sharing lots of different experiences, all for the goal of providing clarity to our community about our support. I have a question, and I know that we're at a place of drafting right now for the administrative regulations, but so the number 251R, which falls under student preferred name, is that just is that number just a placeholder? Because a lot of the information, a lot of the regulations that have been drafted thus far seem to, or a lot, even the language, facilities, things like that, they seem to transcend just the name and perhaps fall into the 100 level policy. So if you could just talk about.
I had that same question,
That,
so
yeah.
I wasn't sure. It seemed like this was just had a lot of for both, and
yeah.
And again, that's something that we need to figure out is, do we have one administrative regulation that's applicable to both? Do we split this up and actually come up with 2 administrative regulations? That's something that is yet to be determined.
Great, and I'm so glad to hear about the plan to listen to students and faculty and others in designing those regulations. That makes me really happy. So, great. That's all I have right now.
Amy?
Yeah, so my questions were similar to Lori's, and it makes sense now that you're saying that this is a draft because it's kind of clear, and in many ways I probably would support kind of an inclusive document that's maybe posted for both of these policies, because even though it may have some extra stuff in the one, it will help lead the people to the other. So that's really helpful. I did want to just point out, and so I didn't realize how early in the draft stage you were, so take these with a grain of salt, but since I jotted them down, I just thought I'd share the feedback. There's just a little bit of some consistency issues in terms of the terms that we use. I know you did a great job of defining everything, but at one point, non-binary students is in there, and we don't quite define that, and our policy is gender expansive is the main term we use. So just some thoughts about whether it matters and what you want to use consistently. There was one little part of one sentence that I just do want to point out now, because I don't want to lose pointing it out. At the end of the paragraph for definitions, it says avoid terms that make these students uncomfortable. And I think we really need to strike the these, because really we just want to avoid terms that make any students uncomfortable, and we don't want to point out a particular group of students. So that was just one that kind of really struck a chord with me, and I wanted to make sure to mention specifically. And I'm happy to share notes about the other things, but I do really appreciate that you guys, I know you really scrambled to get these together to bring to us so that we could have something with the policy to kind of know the direction. And that was really, really important, I think, for both us as board members and for the community to understand. So I know a lot of work went into that at a really busy time, crunch time with starting school, and so I really appreciate that. I did want to address Ms. Chesney's question about participation in athletics, and you could check on this and whether that's applicable to go here, but having attended some PSBA talks in the past on these issues, we specifically talked about that, and my recollection is that the PIAA addresses it as it's a principal's decision process. It's not, it's an individual principal's decision. So my hope would be in making these policies, we would make it pretty clear about how we would approach those things. But your question in terms of whether it should be more specific is a legitimate one. But we as a district have the freedom to make that decision, and then PIAA does adhere to it. So it is a local decision. It's not a PIAA decision. So I hope that that's somewhat reassuring, things that we're going down this path. So at least that's my understanding, and we could hash that out more down the road. And I think that's it. Thanks. I really appreciate the really hard work everybody did on this, and especially the community members and students who came to vulnerable places to talk to us about their experiences. Thanks.
Other questions or Gretchen?
Yeah, thank you for getting this to us, and so far so good. I do understand the public comment about some specific things not being included, and why that may not be so reassuring for some students. So good, I guess, that we're having this discussion and that this is in draft form. Just a thought I had, the district's student database information system will provide a means to record the student's chosen name accessible to parents/guardians. And just from, I know what I've heard from many students, for example, at the Delta program at the middle school, is that sometimes preferences about this, individual preferences can change a lot. Sometimes it can change rapidly, sometimes not. But one thought that I had is that I wonder if there's any way that it could be communicated to students how they could do that quickly, right? So that instead of having to wait for the next time you register for classes or something. However, I'm not sure how it's done right now, but that they could have a little bit of ownership in that, because if they're checking Canvas or whatever and they're constantly seeing that and it's not what they want it to, not what they're reflecting and how they're feeling in terms of that terminology, then that could be detrimental to them and their well-being. And so I don't know how difficult it is to have them be able to have some ownership in that, but that's just a thought that I had. And then the other thought that I had, and I've also, as Amy said, attended a lot of sessions on this topic at PSBA, and sometimes, you know, there are situations where students do not want their chosen name accessible to parents or guardians out of safety reasons, or possibly, you know, being kicked out of their house, or then they, you know, would not be able to go home, like that kind of thing. And so I think it's great that it says in here that the district will provide a means to record, but that it's not mandatory, because my understanding is it's really idiosyncratic, whether that is going to be positive for a student or the opposite. So kudos to the wording of that particular part of the policy. Thank you.
Saria, do you want to address that?
So those are two excellent questions and points, Gretchen. And there's a document under the 251 student preferred name, and it is called the Gender Support Plan. And for students, as they are going through this process, just as you indicated, for some students, the process is more fluid than for others. And there may be regular changes, names that they are identifying with that they want to use. There's going to be several places that the chosen name change form is going to be available. Students do have to get a parent or guardian signature on that form, and that form is going to be accessible in all of the student handbooks. So a student could look at that, whether they're in the at the elementary level. We know it's primarily parents and guardians that are looking at that handbook. At the middle and high school level, a parent, all the student would need to do is get the parent to sign the form, can turn the form into the registrar to get their name changed. For the gender support plan is a document that when a student comes to a supportive adult, that supportive adult can reach out to a school counselor to complete the plan. And at that point, the student can discuss what they need to do if they are looking to change names and pronouns. Like, what is the process that they need to go about? It typically is going to be that chosen name change form that they would have to use. But we just wanted to make sure that all of these documents are easily accessible. Now, for the part where you just discussed about parents and guardians, sometimes the students not wanting their parent and guardian to know. As many of you know, I'm a counselor by training. And one of the key things is that, yes, you're absolutely right, safety could definitely be a concern. But one of our biggest things as a school is we need to support that student. And one of the key pieces is figuring out, navigating that process of parent and guardian notification. Because there's a number of things that when we are looking to change it in our system as a school district, there's issues regarding whether or not we're able to change that without parent or guardian consent. So in counseling with students, whether it be school counseling, and I want to be very, very clear here, because I know that there is a history of problematizing and making it seem as if an individual who identifies as transgender has a mental health concern. So I want to be very clear, I am not saying that here. I'm saying that a student is talking to their school counselor to navigate this process, to figure out how they're going to go about it. That counselor is going to work with that student to find out what's going on. If safety is a concern, we all know the process that all of us as mandated reporters within a school district have to follow if we do feel that that's going to be a significant issue. But that supportive adult, that school counselor, is going to work with that student to navigate that process. But there are some things that we may not be able to change officially in a system because we need that parent guardian notification. So it's a really delicate process that we have to work with. But for the most part, when it comes to counseling, we're working with that student to support them as they determine how they're going to be able to go about notifying their parent and guardian, how they're going to do that, and ensuring that they have resources and support. Because we want to make sure we don't jump in front of the kid and do that, because that is where safety could be a significant issue.
Yeah, thank you. That's all really helpful in just understanding more about those two points. And I just wanted to share one thing, and that is that, as I said before, Dan and I have served on the CAC for Safe Schools for quite a few years now. And in one of those meetings, and I'm sure Jean will remember this, there were some students who were with us at a meeting, and they talked about the education and training piece, which I know a public comment at the beginning of the meeting discussed that topic as well, and how important it is. And what these students said to us at that meeting was basically, we don't, for some teachers and staff, they just don't know. And once we explain it to them, then they call us by our preferred pronoun, but they didn't know before. They didn't know to do that. And then again, going back to PSBA, I was at a session there, and as many of us who have been to that conference know, most of the people in the room I could easily, I think safely say, were over the age of 50, let's say. And there were some students, again, at that particular session who explained basically the same thing, just this basic education about pronouns and names. And I think at that point in the session, also shared what we had experienced and learned from these students at the CAC for Safe Schools meeting. And after the session, I'd say about 10 people came up to the students and to those of us who shared and said, and they were older, and they were so appreciative that they attended the session and learned this and had not realized before listening to these experiences. And so that's why the stories that Lori mentioned and thanking the students who came to the policy meeting are so important. And thank you to those students and parents again. I'll just ditto that. But I just wanted to emphasize with those experiences that I have gone through, that the public comment at the beginning of the meeting is, I agree with, and is very important, because once that training and education happens, it seems like it makes a really big difference. And the students that Dan and I listened to were basically saying, it's not our job to train. That's the job of the school district, that we're students. That's not our job to do this training. And that kind of really resonated with me, and that was probably 2 years ago or more. So I'm just really appreciative and think it's so good that we're addressing this right now, and that this is on our agenda and we're talking about it. And thank you again to everybody who worked on this, and thanks for your additional information, Saria. Thank you.
And Gretchen, I just wanted to point out that one of the key reasons why we pulled, because we know that information is important, I think that one of the key things in ensuring that something happens is mapping out the how. Like, how was this going to happen? Ensuring that administrators are on board, that we don't say that we're going to train and put it kind of like ambiguously out there, but we have not specifically highlighted exactly where and when this is going to happen. We have had trainings in our district on working with transgender and gender expansive youth. At the high school, the entire high school faculty was trained. We've also had we had a training just this past summer from the Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania, and we actually have that wonderful trainer who did that this past summer coming back in January to do a district-wide training. But one of the key things that I think is really important, which is why we said we're going to continue to draft this and work through this, is the how we're going to do this, the when we're going to do it, to ensure that it happens and that it is regularly occurring. And it's not just now pronouns and names, as you were just indicating, Gretchen. It is things like, for example, when we have PE teachers, right, and having students that may have specific needs in needing access to locker rooms, how to navigate those conversations and that process, is understanding the trauma that a student experiences when they are dead named in class, meaning that a name that they no longer identify with is used in front of others. And that is part of trauma-informed care, but it's that part that's typically not discussed, right? So we have a lot of these pieces that we need to work out, and we just want to make sure that we're working with our administrators, ensuring that they're aware of what's happening, so that we're all working together, so that any parent that goes to an administrator and is talking about, is this training happening? The administrator knows what's in our administrative regulations, knows when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, so we can be sure that it's going to happen.
Thank you.
Laurel?
Thank you. This policy is a challenge for me, and I've tried to figure out how to put that into words. Because on the one hand, I was extremely moved. I did have the opportunity because I was at the policy committee where a number of students and adults spoke about the pain they've experienced from treatment they've received. And we're all here because we care very much about kids. We didn't have any faculty talking at that time, but I have reason to understand that there are faculty who also would feel that way. At the same time, the first part of this purpose statement applies to every student, every faculty and employee in the district. And it's that tough line between this particular policy is talking about a specific group of individuals, and so to just say, well, everybody matters, can diminish that and the real issues there. And I don't want to do that. I also am very concerned about having potentially multiple different policies that all basically come back to, we want every person in this district treated with acceptance and respect among all students. We want to educate and provide this safe, supportive, and inclusive learning environment for all students and staff. So that's really all I can say at this point, is that I am struggling with that.
Rick, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, so I just had a quick question specifically about the gender support plan. So I know we had a conversation about like a large part of probably these individuals, gender expansive individuals, is the communication with the specific teachers, the specific education, that this is how, like, this is exactly like what the policy is, this is what we want to do. So I saw at the bottom of the plan, there's like a whole area for team members. So is this kind of like an area where multiple people are involved? I know Dr. Chatters talked about like going to a counselor through like a trusted adult, or is this like how can we make this so that like more people that the student is actually like interacting with are available and there to help?
And that's a really good question. And this is a support plan that can be used K through 12. So if we're thinking about a kid that's in kindergarten through 5th grade, a lot of times at that age, I'll say probably 95% of the time, if not more, parents are involved and may have other team members that they're bringing to the table to support. So for example, you heard me mention Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania. They have individuals there that will support families and advocate with them, so they'll bring that individual to the table. The school counselor will be there, the principal, and likely the grade level teacher of that kid in order to ensure the entire team is on the same page. That may occur at the middle school, probably all the way up to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. At the high school, that team is going to be more likely going to look like that student who's coming to that supportive adult. That supportive adult is likely going to need to pull in a school counselor to navigate that process. And then, as we said, then is pulling in that parent and guardian, and likely a teacher or someone that student feels is supportive. So at the high school, the student is more kind of helping to figure out who is my team, right? Because we really want to be careful about inadvertently outing a student without their consent, right? So that at the high school level. But at the elementary and middle level, a lot of times the parent is stepping forward with other team members that are there to support them, whose name will go down on that plan.
Lori?
Thank you. Laurel, I appreciate your comment about, the district wants everybody to feel this way. Of course we do. The district is inclusive for everybody. And I think if I could just sort of try to respond to your point, it's that, the opening paragraph to 102 says essentially what you were saying. But I think the second paragraph is where we're really trying to make the point that there are students who have not felt that this has been a safe, supportive environment. You know, despite best efforts on the part of administrators and teachers and families to be supportive, there are those who reject the identities of kids in our district. And so my perception of this is that in implementing policies like this, we say to our students and our faculty that we're with them and we support them, and we're going to do everything we can to make them feel comfortable and that they and abide by their right to self-determination, which is a phrase that has stuck with me since one of our policy meetings when one of our students spoke. So I think that when you're at a place in society where there's a group who has been struggling for their rights to exist, we have to create a place that says, yes, we support you. And, you know, the hope is that someday policies like this aren't necessary because those kids are allowed to be who they are without pushback, without any challenge. But what we know is that that isn't the case now. And so I think we have a responsibility to say to those students, staff, and faculty that they belong, we value them, and that their identities are valid.
And well, as you said that, I was just thinking of, you know, follow up. This goes to a lot of what we talk about with equity and inclusion, is that there are a lot of factors to consider when we talk about discrimination. There are legal parameters, and we talk about specific protected classes. So these individuals certainly fall into that category. And so, you know, spelling out how we're going to make sure that they're included and protected makes good sense. You know, the other issue is that so many of these things, when we talk about marginalized communities, you know, to Lori's point, is about a power differential, right? So that there are people who may exclude individuals and have the power to do so. And that's not the same as, this is not meant to be a flippant analogy, but it's the only one I can come up with. One of my 13-year-olds was actually asking me just this week about discrimination. And so I said, you know, it's not like if you're in the hiring process and the person asks you, do you like the color green? And they say, well, I like the color blue, so I'm not hiring you. I mean, we're not talking about things of that realm. We're talking about much more specific, you know, as Lori said, these are parts of people's identity. This is not just about preferences or opinions. So, and I'm rambling now, but I think there are just so many layers that make this different than just saying, well, of course we want all kids to be included. So sorry to ramble.
I think to follow on Lori's point, one of the things that we know is that transgender youth are often maybe more likely to experience homelessness or violence from others nationally. Not, you know, I'm not talking about data from our district specifically, but because we understand that there is amongst that population of youth a greater vulnerability statistically to both violence and homelessness. I think as a district, that's, you know, understanding that data is one reason why we and knowing this is a protected class, that it's worth enshrining in policy some of, you know, where our values are and our expectations as a board for how we would support this group of students. So, and I guess if the question is whether it needs to be a separate policy versus, you know, we have the school climate and inclusive excellence policy, but it seems like there's some idiosyncratic aspects to, how we might be working with these families in terms of, like, for example, spelling out potentially a need for a gender support plan. Some of the other details here, it seems to make sense to have, a particular policy on this. So, any other questions or Gretchen?
I was just going to add quickly that also hearing from experiences at the Delta Middle program, I know that there was a case this past year that came up where a student told a teacher, I want to be called by whatever it was, and the teacher said, well, there's no policy for that, so I'm not going to address you by that name. And it went into an all-school discussion, and all these things happened. But now, if this gets passed, I know this is discussion info tonight, but if a policy like this gets passed, then the teacher would then have to say, oh, well, this is what the policy says, so this is what I will call you. And so it really does make a difference practically in students' lives with a policy like this. So just giving a real-life example where these policies actually do matter quite a lot for some people.
And there's no doubt that the policy obviously provides us with the support so that the procedures or administrative regulations that we put into place give the specifics to the teacher and the steps they need to take, communications, obviously on our end if we're managing things through our information system. So there are a lot of moving parts there on that procedural end, but obviously to have the board state what your beliefs and expectations are and allow us to move forward would be appreciated. Is there anything else from the team?
Expectations, not beliefs, just expectations.
Yeah, correct. Yep. Thanks. Sorry. Yep.
So if you all are ready, we can bring these policies back in a couple of meetings for a vote.
Okay.
The policies, not the regulations.
Right. And so, well, hold on. Look, is this our first reading or our second? Because I couldn't.
First. Yeah.
And can we vote at the second reading? Is that okay? It's been so long since we've managed to have a policy on the docket. I've lost the course of the rules and how many readings we have to have. Thanks. That'd be great.
So 2 meetings from now? Is that, okay.
Lori, we do have an early September slated policy meeting to have any other reflections on this as well.
Right, so that's
So we'll
September
check in on that
7th.
agenda. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Laurel?
Yeah, this goes back to a bit of the earlier discussion, I think, on regulations. The second policy 251 is much more specific and deals with preferred name. And if for some reason teachers, to me, it's sort of just common sense and courtesy that you call students and everyone, just to throw in a personal anecdote, when I first got married and decided to change my last name, someone I knew tried to grandstand and say, well, I'm still going to keep calling you by that old name. And I said, well, I think you'd defend anyone else's. I went back my age to the issues when now his name, the boxer, it's gone out of my mind.
Muhammad Ali.
Thank you. Changed his name, and some people rejected that. And I thought, you'd defend that right. So I think that's common courtesy. If people feel they need a policy for that seems much more specific than many of our policies, but I understand if people feel they need almost permission. This policy, actually, I had fewer problems with in that sense or problems is too strong words, concerns about than the first policy we were discussing. However, the regulations, it seemed to me, go well beyond preferred name. And I'm wary of trying to push things in one way when the language of the policy is different. A number of these regulations seem to me much more in tune with the first policy than with something that says it's about a preferred name.
I think that was the discussion at the beginning
Right.
of this, was whether it should fit, whether that would be attached to, the regulations might be attached to both policies or one or the other.
So I was weighing in on that they really seem to me there are different things going on there.
I think, Laurel, you'd be surprised at how uncommon common courtesy is when it comes to
I wish I were
this
surprised.
particular matter.
I wish I were surprised.
Yeah. All right, so we'll be looking at these again in September then for an action item. So thank you very much for all your work on this. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item C, under information discussion, under the category of facilities, the solar power purchase agreement consultant recommendation is shown in attachment 7C. And we'll have Randy Brown at the table with us, and I know Gretchen was involved in the interviews for this consultant as well, so.
So I think that the memo is pretty self-explanatory. Gretchen can obviously add anything that she would, desire. I think that where we're at is that we've gone through an RFP process that has been mostly led by the school district with some participation from some of the other members of the working group. The process led to some interviews after the submissions, and now the group has made a recommendation to the working group to recommend Green Sky development. And now all of the member organizations are receiving this information. The district is entering into the contract. So we are still working on some of the finite details, as well as trying to come up with a fixed cost, more definitive than the original proposal. Once all of the member organizations have a chance to authorize their representative to the working group to vote yea or nay for the selection, then the working group will get back together, I believe it's on September 15th, and give direction, and then the board will have an opportunity to approve the contract in late September.
Gretchen?
I agree with everything Randy just said. I'll just add anecdotally to give everybody a little bit of a better idea of why Green Sky was chosen. When it was narrowed down to the two, we interviewed both firms, and the people from Green Sky they're so passionate, and the first one his name is Greg. His last name. Pardon? Shively, thank you, Greg Shively. And he actually had created a different company, and then it was bought by Siemens. And at Siemens, he told us that he wanted to be more able to be idiosyncratic and creative and think outside the box to serve his clients, and he was not able to do that with the corporateness of Siemens. And so then he actually created Green Sky with that goal in mind. And it was interesting because he actually said to us a few times during the interview that, it may not even necessarily be a PPA. Like, he has so many different ideas and knows the energy market so well that he is thinking things that basically people have not done before. And of course, the goal being to get the price hopefully below what the district is currently paying. We shall see. But really the way that, and also their passion for seeking out grants, funding for the possibility of what might end up happening. And again, this was just for the hiring of the consulting firm. This is not entering into an energy contract. Just had to say that one more time for clarification. But Green Sky really is an exciting opportunity for the district to be able to work with. And really, I don't think could have found a better partner in trying to help the district figure out how to do this, and do this in a fiscally responsible way. So anyway, we're very excited, and it's moving along. And thank you, Randy, for putting this memo together and everything else you've done. Thank you.
So if you could just clarify the next steps for us, like, do we need to as a board, take any sort of action in order to authorize our representatives to vote on this at the?
You should authorize your representatives to vote or give them the intent, your intent to support their vote for that September 15th meeting, yes. And you could do that tonight, or you could do that on your September 13th meeting.
Okay. Thoughts from other board members, whether we would want to make a motion tonight or maybe add this to the next board meeting agenda? And Dr. Etter, what?
Sorry, Amber, to interrupt. With the new Sunshine Act revision, I don't see any way that we can do it tonight if it can be done on the 13th.
Sounds good.
And I'll just follow that with, there's been some discussion in terms of board process of whether or not we have been responsibly using that decision to move straight from info discussion to an action. And I think our waiting until a September meeting might be more congruent with some of the discussions we've had about board process.
Yeah. Laura?
I'm just wondering from Dr. Etter what new things he's referring to, and if he could maybe send us a copy if it's relevant to us.
The revisions to the Sunshine Act?
Yeah, I may have missed it if you talked about it previously, or...
I didn't speak about it in a board meeting, but PSB, I'm sure, put some things out. I think in general, as it refers to this matter, you're supposed to have your agenda published 24 hours before the meeting, and there are certain limited exceptions where you can add something to the agenda that particular evening, and this is not one of them. If we have the ability to add it later, there's no exigency to have it done tonight, and it is a contract. I don't know how much it will be for, but it's a contract for some sum of money. So there are several reasons why it wouldn't be appropriate to add it tonight.
Would you be able to forward the
Sure.
link or something to that part of the,
Sure.
wherever it is? Thank you very much.
Okay. Jim?
And Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there'll be more clarity by the 13th also.
Sure.
In terms of what other boards support it, and also you were going to negotiate the not to exceed amount to clarify, because there was some question about a per trip price for in-person meetings, or how many were included in the base price.
Yep,
and
that is
so,
correct.
So that we are still going to have Kevin Stahl work on that and to kind of narrow that down.
And I mean, you're technically going to have 2 points to vote for support. Because
Right.
you would authorize Jim and Gretchen, your voting members, to support the working group, and then you as the board will be voting to accept the contract on behalf of the entire working group project. So, but yes, we
Right.
will have more information on the 13th that we can pass along. And as soon as that's available, we'll make that available. We'll share that with all members of the working group.
Right, and just so remember that we're one of the major player in this agreement in terms of power consumption, and so that's why we're taking the lead on this. So the contract will actually be with the State College School District, but on behalf of the Solar Power Purchase Agreement Working Group.
Okay.
Correct. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to board committee reports, and let's try to, in the interest of time, limit each of the committee reports, board reports, to items that aren't on the part of the minutes. Culture, climate, and learning, Dan?
Well, you're making it easy, Amber, because there's only one additional item from the CCL meeting that
Great.
requires reference, and that was an update to the possible preschool partnership with Sinclair. That was part of the discussion.
Okay. All right, looking at upcoming committee meetings, we have several listed on the agenda for over the next couple weeks. And I'll hand it back over to Dan for the Central Intermediate Unit report.
The last meeting of the IU was an organizational meeting, and among the major events that took place was the election of a new IU board president, a fellow named Jeff Wall, who is the representative from Penns Valley School District, And the vice president is an individual named Jeff Johnston, who represents Keystone Central. And so I will no longer be serving in one of those two roles, which I was willing to defer to others at this point, just in terms of turnover, the importance of having a variety of people involved at the decision process. And it's important to say, too, I think that the IU board has really expanded the roles of different board members into a committee structure, and we have more engagement than we have in the previous 4 or 5 years that I've been involved with the IU board, so I think it's going in the right direction. We continue to work as a board in trying to deal with some facilities challenges that are just presenting themselves. We had hopes for a property that might work out in Clearfield County, but that failed to occur, and we're continuing, the intermediate unit is continuing to search for viable properties which could serve as a home, essentially, for IU programs and administrative activities. And that is still a process that we're pursuing. We're continuing to look for new facility opportunities that have yet to present themselves, and it's kind of an ongoing process that we're involved with.
Okay. All right. Jim, the CTC Advisory Committee?
So we haven't met since the last time, but just a general comment is that Dr. Morden's been with our district for just over a year now. And I think he's done a wonderful job updating our curriculum in the CTC to comply with the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the requirements for completion and certification there, yet still making a great majority of those courses available as electives to the rest of our high school. And that really shows the benefit of an integrated school with a career technology center as part of the school. So he's done a wonderful job so far, and we hope to have him for a while longer.
Great. Good to hear. Okay. CAC reports. We have not had an athletics meeting since the last time I reported on it. Lori, facilities?
No, we haven't had one.
Okay. Finance, Laurel? School health and safety, is Gretchen or Dan?
They won't
No.
pick those up until the new school year, probably November.
Okay.
Might be the earliest scheduled health and safety CAC.
Okay. Jim, technology?
We're scheduling one for September, and the first item that's going to be on there is sort of the reaction to the new parent portal software that we previewed at our previous CTC meeting or CAC meeting, and that we'll review some of the comments that we're getting from parents on it.
Okay, great. So looking out at future agendas, we have a special meeting on August 20th at noon that will be held remotely. September 13th is our next regular meeting. You can see what's on the agenda at this time for that meeting. And then moving forward, August 27th is the following meeting after that. So board members, is there anything for future agenda planning for us to take into consideration? Okay.
I just want to hopefully, I know the middle of the day on Wednesday, we have all of our faculty back for our opening meeting. If you're able to make that, appreciate that. And obviously the excitement around next Tuesday being our opening day with students returning. So thanks. We're all fired up, looking forward to a lot of communications going out from the district and principals to families, and a lot of moving parts right now. So thanks for all your support and helping us get up and running.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so with that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Leah, so moved.
Duffy, second.
Okay, that has been moved and seconded. All in favor of adjourning at this time?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. We are adjourned then.